Hello guys, David Vos here again. Beautiful day here. Very sunny. Looks like we're not going to get any rain until day after tomorrow, I think Wednesday. So it's beautiful out, sunny, and hope you're having a wonderful day. Well, friends, I want to today just literally give you my story because, and I've given this story several times. I've discussed, there's so much that happened. If you tell my story from the beginning, it's hard to really just put it into one video. Um, so I don't know where we're going with this, but I do want to start just at the beginning, tell you a little bit about my life and being a Jehovah's Witnesses and what I think happened. Although there are probably a lot of things that I'll never be able to fully recover or understand. I don't know how to get into people's hearts. I don't know why they did certain things. All I have right now is the testimony of my own self and the questions that I had growing up. You know, you can be literally in a snake pit. Like that Raven Giuliani said, they would lower her into these pits that had dead snakes in it. And if you think, oh, come on, Dave, they didn't really kill the snakes in some ritual ceremony. These are Jehovah's Witnesses now, for goodness sake. She probably just saw a dead snake in there, or it was common for snakes to go in there and die, so it would just happen. All right, but what's your explanation for the pits themselves? She said they were 6 to 8 feet deep, and they would lower her down in the pit, and she would sit in the middle and do automatic writing that everyone knew, even at the watchtower, was a demon. They brought her there with the dead snakes already in it. If they're going to use this young woman as a conduit, as a oracle, I'm sure because they are Freemasons and they know certain things about the occult, they know that this is very common. This is something that people did in the ancient times to get oracles. They would use a young woman and they would train these people from youth. They would put them in good conditions, good surroundings. I suspect that they approached this man that was her father and asked them if they could basically allow the Watchtower Bible Tract Society to use their daughter, if they would have a baby. It would all be planned, and this baby would be prepared from the time that it was a child. This is probably why they would read to her from the book Angels and Demons, to get her familiar with the idea of demons, wanting to be part of Jehovah's organization, and some rationale in her mind as to why she was talking to these demons or whatever. They had to tell the organization, the peasants in the organization, one thing. We're Christians. We don't do the necromancy and mediums, and we're not the occult. But in the meantime, all of these 12 members of the governing body, or whatever, however many members there were, standing around in a circle in a room that was set up with a altar, pews, people standing around in a circle, incense being poured into the room, and a young girl that had to be in a specific place where she could be free and open to receiving these messages from this demon. So they had to familiarize her with this when she was very little. She has memories from the time she's 3 years old. And, we can only assume that from the time she was born, she was being prepared for this job. So she wouldn't have seen anything frightening or scary. They would have made sure that before anything was going on with her, the killing of the snakes or whatever went on before she got there and they lowered her down into the pit. She's a little girl. That would have been frightening for her. So they're preparing her to go into the trance-like mode to receive messages from this demon. But why did they put the snakes in the pit? Well, when I heard this, I immediately thought of the oracle at Delphi, which was all about this dead snake, that they had to kill the dead snake before the snake would actually be the voice that would be channeled through this woman called Mother Earth, or the goddess of, they called her Gaia in Greek. And this is Mother Earth, this is the Virgin Mother, or sometimes the Widow Mother, but this is Eve talking to the snake. So I looked it up, and this is what AI says about this Delphi oracle. It was something where they would get a young virgin, and she would speak as an oracle. And it was the Pythia. The python, or the Pythia, was about this snake oracle. And it says here in AI that they did a purification ritual. The Pythia would undergo purification rituals, bathing in the Castilian spring before entering the inner sanctum. Vapors. The Pythia would inhale intoxicating fumes, believed to be the breath of Apollo, which arose from the opening in the ground where she sat on a tripod. So here's a picture of this young virgin sitting on the tripod, is what they call it. But it's really just a seat, but it's high like a stool. And the priests would stand around and listen to this woman speak from this desk or stool, which sounds very much like what Raven Giuliani says she did in the middle of these governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses in this pit. She would sit sometimes on the ground and sometimes on a stool. They lowered her down in the ground, an opening in the ground, and she says that when she would sit in this pit, sometimes she would sit on the ground, and sometimes she said that she would sit on a stool or a small chair. So I'm assuming it was like a stool. And she didn't mention the sacred springs or sacred water, but she did mention the vapors, the incense, that they were all smelling this vapor or incense. So it says that the Pythia would inhale intoxicating fumes, the breath of Apollo. And then it says that there would be laurel leaves. She might also chew some sacred laurel leaves. And a trance and utterance under the influence of the vapors and rituals, the Pythia would enter a trance-like state and utter pronouncements, often in an incomprehensible way, which were then interpreted by priests. Now, obviously, these 12 men, or these governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses, were the priests. They would interpret what this young virgin, she was only 3, 4, 5, 6 years old when she was doing this. She was obviously a virgin. The snakes that were in the pit are obviously a symbol of the defeat of the python. And once you defeated the python, I guess it was required the serpent, who was the wisest of the creatures that the Lord had made. Once you had defeated the python, he's lying there dead, then his spirit had to come into the virgin and speak. So I'm almost positive this is what they were doing at the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society headquarters, to produce the Daniel book and probably several other books like the Babylon book and so forth, that as a child I actually studied, and my father actually taught many thousands of people from this book and expounded upon this knowledge given to this Watchtower Bible and Tract Society through the oracle of a young girl named Raven Giuliani. But now, here's something I want to talk about before I get into my story, just real briefly, is that Raven is not her name. She says that her name is something a little, her last name was something different. She didn't say if Raven was her actual name. However, what she did say is that she was the girl in the picture of the You Can Live Forever in a Paradise Earth book. And she says above there is some demons that are looking down at the girls bathing in the pool. And the girl that's in the foreground, according to this Raven Giuliani, that's her. Now, I looked that up on the internet, and initially, all I could find is that this girl, some were saying, used to be a porn star. And there is a girl by that name who was a porn star. However, she lived much earlier and would have been 87 by now or something. I mean, you know, this girl's not that old. The woman, Raven, in the video that we saw the other day, says she was born in 1962. Now, there's another girl. She was born 1953, which isn't that much different than 1962. It's 9 years difference. I don't know. Perhaps she's trying to hide her age or something. Because I looked it up and AI said that the girl that was born in 1953, whose name is Pascal Petit, very lovely woman, is definitely the girl in the foreground in this picture. She said that's her. That girl, according to AI, was born 1953. Now, I did notice in her interview that she said she was in a wheelchair and that she'd been in a wheelchair for a while, that she had trouble walking, her mobility. Now, if she was only about 60 years old, be less likely that she would have mobility problems. So it is possible, since she is in a wheelchair, she says she doesn't have to use the wheelchair all the time. But when she's walking longer distances, she'll take the wheelchair. So it sounds to me like the only reason she needs the wheelchair is she's older. And maybe she's frail and stuff. So she might be older than 60. In that case, the woman that is giving her testimony about Jehovah's Witnesses may have been caught in a lie. Not only that, she says that she was with Jehovah's Witnesses all this time. However, this woman was a porn star. So I want to get to the bottom of this. Was this the picture she said that she was in the illustration there in the Watchtower, or the book You Can Live Forever? Do we have that right, what she said? I'll play it again, and then I'll look it up, and I'll show you the picture, and we'll determine if, indeed, by her own testimony, that's her. Then why is she hiding, and why is Jehovah's Witnesses hiding that she was also a porn star? And she wasn't supposedly born or living around Pennsylvania. So the most likely idea is that it's not her, and she's not lying. However, why did she say that was her? So let's look at this. And that is the book, You Can Live Forever in a Paradise on Earth. And you see on the top left, the picture she evidently is discussing, where she's in the water bathing, and the angels are up above looking down, and there's several women bathing. Now, she said that's her. But if that's her, notice that that is a picture of a woman named Pascal Petit, who some say was a porn star. She was obviously in a couple of magazines, in the Today magazine as well as the Stern magazine. And I'm not sure, but I think one of those is a Playboy magazine or something. I looked it up on AI, and AI says that she is that woman, that woman in the book, You Can Live Forever in a Paradise on Earth, is the woman in the Today magazine. If that's her, there's a couple of problems. Before we get to that, let's find out if she really is that girl in the water that the angels are looking down at in the book that Jehovah's Witnesses published, You Can Live Forever in a Paradise Earth. Now, first, let me get the clip where she says this.
All right, go ahead. All right. What do you think of the artwork, the photography, and the paintings of the watchtower?
Well, I'm a little bit biased because I was in a couple of them. In the Your Youth book, I was the kind of ugly little girl with a ponytail leaning over in the mirror putting lipstick on the chapter that had to do with vanity. And
is that the one with the blemish?
I don't know, but I remember I was embarrassed about it. I didn't really want to tell anybody about it at the time. It was a chapter on makeup or vanity or something, and the girl was leaning across the dresser putting lipstick on. She had the ponytail. And I was also one of the last things that I did before we moved was I was photographed, and they ended up using that as the woman in the foreground, or at least starting from. I can't say that I actually looked that good as the picture turned out, but they used that picture of me to start the picture in the foreground in the Live Forever book of where the the angels are looking down from heaven at the women bathing. The one at the very bottom of the page was taken from a photograph of me.
Huh.
Now, as far as I've heard the rumors about the subliminal stuff,
yeah,
but I don't really know about that personally. I don't know anything about it.
I pulled this up. This is page 92 or 91. And there you see the angels looking down. And it says, the angelic sons of deity notice the daughters of men. And what they're looking down on is this picture where there are these three women bathing. The one in the foreground is the one she said she was. She said she was the woman in the foreground bathing with the angels looking down. Now, I've looked and there's no other image like this. The next image is their spirits that these women were having relations with or whatever before the flood. And this is about, the sons of deity who looked down upon the earth and saw the daughters of men and took the wives of all whom they chose. Evidently, they saw them bathing. So, according to this woman, that's her. And that poses a problem because this woman, according to AI, let me show you. I asked AI about this. They don't want to give you the answers unless you give them the answers, and they're boxed into a corner, and they know that you know something and there's proof, and you give them the proof, and then they have to try to figure out a way to explain it. So if you just ask them if it's the same woman and who she is, they say, well, they don't know. But I gave them a really good concise question with some facts so that they could face this question. And their answer is, a woman named Pascal Petit has been identified as appearing in the Watchtower organization's book, You Can Live Forever in Paradise on Earth, as well as the magazines Today and Stern. However, there is no information in the provided search results to definitively confirm the identity of the Pascal Petit, her birth year, or any details about her life. It's possible that the Pascal Petit in these magazines and the Watchtower book is a different individual than the two with relevant public profiles mentioned in the previous response. One was a porn star and one is a poet. The actress and the poet. Actress, porn star, and another one, the poet. The poet was born in 1953. And unless Raven Giuliani is lying about her birth date, then she's neither one of these girls. But she is the woman in the Stern magazine on the cover. We know that. And the Today magazine. Or I should say, that she said she was the girl in the foreground. The girl that's in the foreground, the first girl, that girl is definitely, according to AI and according to my eyes and anyone else who can look, that is the same person in the You Can Live Forever on a Paradise Earth. Same person that's in the Stern magazine and Today magazine. The only other possibility, and we'll get into that when we get to the very end, because we're going to exhaust all possibilities here because I need to know. But there is one possibility. It may be the only possibility that we've got left by the time we get done with this, is that she did not mean she was the first girl with the face that looks like the woman in the Stern magazine, but she was the girl behind. Because I do acknowledge the fact that when she said she was in the foreground with the girls bathing, she said she was the one that was starting it. Now, I don't know what she means by starting it. And, unless she means the first girl in the background starting it. So perhaps she's not saying she's that girl, and she may not have any idea who that girl is. But she might not be saying that she's that girl. Because all of those three girls bathing all kind of look similar. And the one in the background might have been taken from a photograph of Raven Giuliani. And then that would clear up everything. But before we get to that idea or thought, let's acknowledge that it sounds at first more like she's the first girl. And that girl's on a magazine named Stern and another magazine. This is crazy. So could that have been her? See, it says, it's important to note that the provided search results do not provide any information about the magazine Today and Stern, featuring a person named Pascal Petit. Well, we know that she was on the cover of both the Today magazine and the Stern magazine, which by itself presents a problem. Because if she was a Jehovah's Witness all this time, going to all the meetings, conventions, up until she was, she left the organization, I suppose that picture in the Stern or the, I'll look at the date when she was in those magazines here in just a second. That would be a good thing to look at because she is a little older in those pictures. So perhaps she did that after she left the organization. But what we do know right now is that she was in the Stern magazine and the Today magazine. And I asked, is that a porn magazine? And they said, well, Stern is a weekly general interest magazine published in Germany, is not considered a pornographic magazine. It focuses on topics like politics, business, culture, and social issues. Stern is known for its in-depth reporting, interview, photojournalism, and a mix of light and serious material. The magazine is also recognized for taking stances on various societal discussions and issues, including neo-Nazi activities. However, it has been noted for its use of provocative photographs of violence and sexual imagery in some instances. The term Today magazine can refer to different publications. So, I don't know why they don't know which magazine, because I've been talking to them about this. Let me see if I can find out exactly which magazine here the Today one is. Now, I looked it up and I found out that it said Today and underneath the New John Bull. So we know what magazine it is, and here's another problem. This magazine, Today, the New John Bull, was a British magazine that ran from 1960 to 1964. Well, this Raven Giuliani that channeled Satan for the Jehovah's Witnesses was born in 1962, she says. So she would have been 2 years old when this magazine was publishing this woman. It almost seems like if this woman in somewhere like 1963, 1962, so there were no more magazines after 1964. So with that magazine Today, with that girl's picture on the cover had to have been before 1964, and there could not have been a picture of this woman who was born in, she says, 1962. Even if she's born 1953, she would have only been 11, and the girl in that picture is older than 11. So that cannot be her, and she claims it is her. I mean, if there's no photoshopping, and let me just ask AI if she's really in that magazine. And this is what AI says. Yes, if Today the New John Bull magazine was discontinued in 1964, the woman on its cover is the same person pictured in the book You Can Live Forever in Paradise on Earth. She would have to be someone who lived years before 1964. The book You Can Live Forever in Paradise on Earth was first published in 1982. Therefore, the individual would have been alive during or before 1964. Now remember, she says she was born 1962. She would have been 2 years old. That couldn't have been her at 2 years old. That was a grown woman. So prior to the publication of the book, Pascale Petit, the French actress, was born on February 27, 1938. She began her film career in 1957, and she was active until 2001. If she is the woman pictured, this would align with the information presented. So she could be the woman in that picture. She says she is. If she's not lying, then she was probably born in 1938, not in 1962. And that's why she's in a wheelchair. And if she was born in 1938, it's very likely she is in a wheelchair, because that would make her, like, let's see, almost 90 years old. That would make her 87 years old, as I said before. Now, we've got several possibilities. The woman that said she was channeling Satan for Jehovah's Witnesses either is lying about this and everything else, and it's all made up. And I don't believe that. She knows everything about Jehovah's Witnesses. She knows, I mean, it would be the biggest hoax that I've ever seen. She knows so much about Jehovah's Witnesses and all the underground tunnels and all the brothers and their ages and their names, and she talks about them as if she was there. And there were others that phoned into the show and asked her questions, and they seemed to be able to verify that all that she was talking about was true. They knew the congregation she went to. They knew the people in the congregation. So that would mean, if she's not lying about everything that happened, that she's just lying about her age. And she's 87 years old. That's why she's in the wheelchair. However, that would mean that in when she was doing this channeling, and that was her in the book. What did it say in 1982 when they published You Can Live Forever in a Paradise on Earth? If she was in there in that book in 1982, well, she would have been, the woman in that picture in 1982 would have been 44 years old. And even that doesn't seem really reasonable to me, because the woman in the picture really does look younger. But they may have taken a younger picture of her when they put it in there in 1982. So they were taking a picture of her when she was probably, I don't know, 25 or something. So that seems reasonable. But if she's lying about her age, and you could understand that she didn't want to reveal who she was. She doesn't want anybody coming to her door. She wants to make up a date of when she was born just to hide her age or her identity. That's fine. It doesn't mean she's lying. However, it means that instead of channeling for Knorr and Franz and Henschel, which was like in the 60s, she could have been doing it in the 60s, but in the 60s, she would have been in her 20s, Because if she's born 38, then we got 48, 58, it's 20 years. And 60 something, when she says she was 3 years old, she was actually 25 or something. So she may still have been a virgin. She may, it may be her, and she's just hiding her age. She wasn't 3. The only problem I see here, then, at this point, is that she's lying about herself being 3 when this all started. She may not have started this when she was 3. If she did, it was way back in 1938, and she was channeling for Rutherford. So I am very confused about all of this, let me say, to say the least. But she's kind of jipping us, because now we're hearing the story and thinking it started in 1963 or 65 when all this channeling started, when in actuality she started when she was 3. This happened back in 1940. 1938 she was born. And this means she's been channeling for the governing body like Rutherford, Knorr, and all the rest for years. And that was something we should have known. We should know about that. She's not telling us this whole story. So she's leaving part of it out if she really was born in 1938. If she was not born in 1938, maybe she's the other girl who was born in 1953, but that woman was a poet, and there's no proof then that she was a porn star. Okay, so maybe the woman born in 1953 is her, and she's only lying about her age by, 9 years? Well, let me show you the lady that was born in 1953. She does look a little bit like this girl. Here's a woman named Pascal Petit. And remember, AI says they don't know which one it is. It could be her. This woman was actually born on December 20th, 1953. Pascal Petit, born 20th of December, 1953. Practically on Christmas, Day or something. Is a French-born British poet. Now we got another problem. She's born in France? Not in Pennsylvania? Welsh and Indian heritage. She was born in Paris and grew up in France and Wales. She trained as a sculptor at the Royal College of Art and was visual artist for the first part of her life. Well, looking at that woman who is now 70 or something, I guess she would be something like that. Anyway, it does look a little bit like her. Okay, now she's much older and heavier. That does look like her. But she is now lying, if that's her, about everything, because she didn't even live in the United States. She lived in, Paris and Wales and or something. And she wasn't a Jehovah's Witness, she was a sculptor. Okay, well, maybe she was neither one of these women. Maybe she was neither one. According to AI, they don't know if this woman or the other woman or some other woman was in the magazine. Now, the only lie that we have her in, if she's a different woman than either one of these, which she obviously must be, for any of this to make sense, but she's lying about her age by 11 years, which probably fits the bill a little better. And it also means if she started when she was 3, she didn't start in 65. She started in 1954, started doing this. Maybe that's what she's doing. She's just hiding her age. But we're still having the problem of a little lie. Not just her age, but she's also lying about her name. It's not Raven. She said that's not her last name, but she gave her last name. It's some other name I don't remember right now. But the name she gave and the name she says but the name the two names that she gave are not Pascal Petit. And the woman on the magazine is, according to the magazine, Pascal Petit. Of course, the magazine could have been hiding her real name too. And that could have been a screen name. But finally, we come down to the last thing that we can't avoid. If that's her, she says it's her, then she's also in a magazine published in Germany about neo-Nazis and violent porn. We know that. So she's lying about her age, her name, and her other career of posing for magazines such as Stern and Today. Why would a Jehovah's Witness that's constantly once a week going and channeling Satan for this governing body organization, the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society, why would she take time out of her busy schedule as a Jehovah's Witness, pioneering and everything, to go do these photo shoots for worldly magazines? And get this, and this is something we actually know for a fact. The woman in the You Can Live Forever book that the Watchtower made definitely is the same girl in the Stern magazine from the neo-Nazi magazine. Now, they could have just saw the picture from the neo-Nazi magazine and decided to use it, just use it in their Forever, You Can Live Forever in the Paradise. But why would Jehovah's Witnesses use a picture, a porn star, whoever, some lady posing in some magazine? And why would this lady claim to be her? There's a lot of unanswered questions here, friends. If you go down here, you see some more of the pictures of this woman. And honestly, I don't think that's the same woman. I really don't. I mean, well, now, there on the left is that woman. All right, I clicked on that. Okay, this is Pascal Petit. This has got to be the woman in the magazine. It's the spitting image. That's her. Guarantee it. That's her. Look at. That's the woman in the magazine that she claims to be. And this is an actress. She looks apparently quite popular and famous. She's got lots of pictures. And I think she might have been in movies or something. I mean, it's obvious. Look at the one on the right there. That's her. The one in the Stern magazine, in the Today magazine. We found it. This is her. She's an actress. Let's find out what kind of movies this woman was in. There's certainly a lot of pictures of her in here. She must have been a big famous actress back in the day. So she's the one that would be 87 years old today. In fact, right here, that's what she looks like, many years later. She's quite a bit older there. All right, so let's see if we can find out who this particular actress is. And guys, she was born February 27th, 1938, Pascal Petit, born Anne-Marie Petit. A French actress, appeared in more than 50 films from 1957 to 2001. All right, I brought her up, Pascal Petit, 1938, the French actress. And he had 50 films, and as I'm looking at that woman right there, I have to say that's a match. I cannot believe that's not her. That's her. If this woman, Raven, she calls herself Raven Giuliani, if she says that's her, and she's 87 years old, and she must have been channeling Jehovah's Witnesses literature all the way back to the 40s, and I smell some kind of a rat here. I don't I can definitely see that she'd be trying to hide her age, but the problem is that this woman lived in France and never stepped foot, or at least didn't live here in the United States, and certainly not in Pennsylvania. All right, AI says there's no information to suggest that Pascal Petit, the actress born in 1938, ever lived in Pennsylvania or anywhere else in the United States. Her biography indicates she was born in Paris, France, worked primarily in French, German. Oh, there's why she's in a German magazine talking about neo-Nazis, and worked primarily in French, German, and Italian productions throughout her career. She also acted in French television series and made for TV movies later in her career. Her IMDb page lists her spouse as Gianni Esposito and mentions they had a child while living in Italy. Well, up here it says that throughout her life, Pascal Petit worked as a hairdresser before venturing into acting. She rose to prominence with roles in European international co-productions during the 1960s, playing characters such as Cleopatra and a queen for Caesar. Later, she also acted in a French television series and made for TV movies. That is crazy that she played the character Cleopatra, queen for Caesar. I mean, this could not get more bizarre. But, while there is still a possibility that the woman that's in the magazine, we know the woman in the magazine, in Stern Magazine, Today Magazine, is the woman in the Forever, You Can Live Forever in Paradise Earth. Same woman. You could just see the exact same hair, same face, same everything. That's her. So we know that she's older than she says, if that's her. And we know that there's got to be a 90% chance that it's this woman. However, this woman never lived in the United States. So I just don't know what to tell you guys. I think we might have been hoaxed. So here's the consternation. Here's the dilemma that we have. The woman that was interviewed for 2 hours is believable, and she knows everything about everything. So she had to have been a Jehovah's Witness. She knew a lot of stuff. She knew these people. But that doesn't necessarily mean that she's telling the truth about the channeling of the devil. Although there are some peculiarities, because I'm going to show you here in a minute that what she's describing is something that, if she was trying to describe it, if she knew what she was saying, she's right on. But since she doesn't know why she was doing the things that she was doing, she was just being used. She didn't know anything about the oracle at Delphi. And what she describes is the oracle at Delphi. Exactly. And we're going to show you that. So you'd think if she knew that, if she's describing, if she made this up, and she got it from the Delphi oracle, the oracle at Delphi, that she would have mentioned it, that it was the same, but she acted like she didn't try to put it together. So little things like that tells me that she's telling the truth. But we've got this dilemma. The whole thing is this. After going through all of this, I know a lot of you are going to go ahead and just dismiss what the woman said and say, well, she must be lying. But the reason that I don't believe she's lying is that there is something that is true, that is exactly what she describes. And she doesn't act like she is read. Very few people know anything about the oracle at Delphi. And for her to have concocted the whole story, she would also have had to have known all of the people at the Watchtower Bible Tract Society and all the presidents and the elders and all these things, and so much has been confirmed that I have concluded in my own heart that rather than her lying about the whole thing, I don't think she's been lying at all. And I think when she said that she was the girl in the foreground, she didn't mean the one that just happens to be a porn star. I think she meant one of the other girls. Because if we're going to hinge the whole thing, say, oh, she's a liar, based on the fact that that woman isn't her, because it can't be her and her story be true, then I would conclude that she didn't mean that woman. She meant one of the other girls in the foreground. And that clears everything up. Now, one thing we could do, and maybe somebody could get back to 6 screens, because I imagine they have her number. If somebody could just give her a ring and ask her if she meant the girl in the foreground or the girl behind. If she's talking about the girl behind the girl in the foreground, then everything's fine. So that's where I'm at. And I had really planned on going into my story. But when I started getting into this and I found this little discrepancy and I needed to work my way through it because this is important. I needed to know for sure because listen, if Jehovah's Witnesses were channeling the devil, I need to know for sure. So we need to get that knowledge. But I'm of the opinion at this point that she's not a liar. I have never heard her say anything that sounds like she's lying. And if the only thing she said that could ruin all of her testimony is that she's the girl in the foreground, maybe she just meant the girl, one of the girls in the foreground, not the first girl. And if you listen again to what she says, maybe that is what she said. Let me play again what I'm talking about.
And I was also one of the last things that I did before we moved was I was photographed, and they ended up using that as the woman in the foreground, or at least starting from. I can't say that I actually looked that good as the picture turned out, but they used that picture of me to start the picture in the foreground.
So she says they used the picture she took to start the picture in the foreground. I don't know, when you're talking, sometimes just talking, you say things that maybe the words aren't put together quite right. I don't know what she means to start the picture in the foreground. She could mean the very first woman in the foreground, or she could mean the woman that starts the 3 girls from the first girl behind the other 2 coming forward. She was the first one that started the foreground. Maybe that's what she means. I really don't know. However, I'm not going to disregard everything she said just because I don't know which girl she meant. If she means that she was that girl, we've got some explaining to do. So maybe somebody get a hold of her and find out what girl she's speaking of there. But as of right now, I'm going to show you why I believe she really is telling the truth. Because what she describes is literally, exactly, the Oracle of Delphi. Now, look at this. This is really going to blow your mind. I think after you look at this, you'll see there's no question that what Jehovah's Witnesses were trying to do is establish an oracle with this woman. It may very well be that she was the only woman during those years that they were using, and they may have used a woman before her, and they're probably using another woman now after she grew up and reached 13. She was no longer a virgin or virgin material. She probably wanted to go on and become married and so forth. And I think that's why they stopped using her when she got to be about 13. You can look at the pictures. That's the Delphi temple. And it's certainly about serpents. And it says, Python, the guardian, before Apollo. Remember, Apollo is the destroyer. That's not a good sign, and he's also considered the Antichrist, Apollyon, the Antichrist. And before Apollo established his oracle at Delphi, the site was associated with Gaia, the earth goddess. So this girl, Raven, and I don't know if there's a reason her name is a raven, a black bird, and Giuliani, that is like July or a time of joy, jubilation. But it says that, so I believe that this young girl, a virgin, they started her off as soon as they could, 3 years, 4 years old, dressed her in a blue robe, put her on a chair, desk, tripod in the center of a pit or in the center of a room, made a terrible, she called it a nasty plastic vapor smell. Well, it's the foul odors of the python pit, the dead snake, because, well, let me read on. It says, the site was associated with Gaia, the earth goddess, and protected by her offspring, the monstrous serpent Python. In some accounts, Python was described as a massive dragon-like creature, guarding the sacred space and the prophetic stone believed to be the center of the earth. Apollo's victory, Apollo, seeking to establish his own oracle, challenged and killed Python with his arrows. So this is why when the little girl was lowered down 6, 7, 8 feet into this pit, a snake pit, there were these dead snakes and the odors, the foul odors coming up from the pit. And it was the overcoming of this python, the dead corpse of the probably they considered him to be the serpent, who was the wisest of all the creatures the Lord had made, like a channeler. In fact, the word serpent there in Genesis chapter 1 and 2 and 3, in Genesis chapter 3, is a word that can be used in Hebrew as a medium. It can be a whisperer. It literally is the word that they would use in this priesthood, the Python priesthood, where they would whisper these messages, this oracle. And so perhaps they saw the serpent in the garden as not an actual serpent, but as a medium. Or perhaps they thought that it was Eve that was the medium that was talking to the serpent. And this young woman was probably representing Eve, the virgin mother, who spoke to the serpent and overcome the serpent by partaking of the knowledge of good and evil, having her eyes open, the revelation. If this is true, then that means that Jehovah's Witnesses knew all along the stuff that I'm teaching is the truth. That we were supposed to come into this world like a classroom. Our mother Eve initiated us, and she was the oracle, the virgin mother, also sometimes the widow, because as in the story of Isis, her husband dies and she has to have a child. So in our Bible, sometimes she's a barren woman, a widow, or a virgin, but it's always Mother Eve. So the victory symbolized by the triumph of the newer Olympian order over the older chthonic powers represented by the python. The python's name, the priestess of the Delphic oracle who delivered prophecies, was known as the Pythia. Interesting that her name was Raven, which is a blackbird. The name is believed to derive from the name of the serpent Python, or the ancient name for Delphi, Pytho. Rotting corpses, the vapors, according to some myths, the decomposing body of python of the snake. Remember, she was dropped into a pit where they had these smelly vapors, and there was these dead snakes laying around, she said. And she had to be taught not to be afraid, because her dad used to take her out along the road, and he would teach her to pick up dead animals that had already been hit along the road, like dead squirrels, dead snakes, and they would pick them up, and she got to be okay with being around dead things, and they were trying to train her to do this. So this is what she testifies to in that video that we put up 2 days ago, 2157, where it's 2 hours long, where she describes her experience being the oracle for Jehovah's Witnesses. So it released noxious vapors. That's what she said, that they were, she called it an incense, but it was some smoky stuff that she said was noxious, was not a good smell at all. It's not the same as the myrrh, she said, in the Catholic temple. But it's these noxious odors from the dead python. They were enacting the story of the Garden of Eden, where Eve was receiving the oracle from the snake. Now, if they believed that the snake was the devil, then Eve was listening to the devil and getting some good out of it. This might be why they were confusing. This is why a lot of these occult individuals get involved with practices that they somehow in their mind think is good. Maybe they interpret the story that that serpent in the garden was evil, and Eve, the mother of all living, spoke to the devil and got all this information, and her eyes were open, and this is how they interpret it. But in reality, that snake was not the devil. The devil's Yahweh. And that snake was Jesus, because it was Yahweh who cursed Jesus by the law. You see, the devil wasn't cursed by the devil. We can prove from the Bible, Jesus said to the Judeans, your father is the devil, a liar and a murderer. What kind of a deity? You ask for bread, he gives you serpents. So, it's very obvious to me that this is what Jehovah's Witnesses were enacting, is the oracle at Delphi. I would really like to know, after this young girl was discontinued, who they put in the place, and why is she calling herself Raven. Anyway, guys, I'm going to go ahead and go. It's we're almost an hour, and I did not get to talk about my life and what I know, the things that happened to me while I was in this organization. But I guess we'll have to do that another time, and I will do that perhaps tomorrow, but I've got a lot of work to do tomorrow. I may not even get a video out tomorrow, but if I do, I'll do that one. If not, it'll be the next day or something. But I want to share what I know about Jehovah's Witnesses and things that have happened in my life. But I got into this today, and it was very, very interesting, and I wanted to parse this all out. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, and if anybody can get over there to Six Flags and ask them to call her and find out which girl she thinks she was, we'll be able to determine whether or not she's lying about all of this, or whether she's telling the truth. I'm going to go ahead and go. Hope you have a wonderful evening. The Lord will bless you all. He loves you all so very much. You got to believe that. It's not like they're telling you he's an angry, mean deity. No, he's love, and he's always love. He's always loving his children. And he's not partial. He cares for everyone. So please just seek the Lord. Seek and you shall find. Knock and it'll be open. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Lord will bless you. Have a good one.